The wind out on the Carter Ranch always carried a voice. Some days it whispered comfort, brushing soft over prairie grass and carrying the smell of wild sage into the homestead kitchen. Today it whistled a warning, harsh, restless, uneasy. 17-year-old Emily Carter stood on the front porch, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm sunlight, listening as if the wind might tell her how to escape a future she never asked for. She had grown up with the dust of the open, range on her boots, and freedom in every breath. Her father, Samuel Carter, had raised her like a boy in many ways. She knew how to rope a calf, how to sharpen a blade, and how to hold a rifle steady when wolves stalked the cattle at night. Yet somehow, despite all her independence, one decision had been made entirely without her. She was promised. Promised to an Apache warrior. It had happened months earlier, when a peace treaty between settlers and the Apache Nation had hung by a thread. Raids and bloodshed had torn through the valley for years. Finally, both sides agreed. There needed to be something stronger than signatures on paper to keep peace alive. Something personal. Something binding. Emily Carter, the rancher's brave, bright frontier daughter, was chosen to be the symbol of that promise. They told her the warrior's name, Chayton. They told her he was a respected leader among his people, strong as the mountains, swift as the desert wind. They told her the marriage would ensure peace across the land. What they didn't tell her was how she was supposed to feel. A wagon rumbled past the porch, and the driver tipped his hat. Everyone seemed to know the day was near when the Apache warrior would ride into town and take her away. The women in the settlement whispered about it behind gloved hands. Poor girl. Given to a savage. At least her sacrifice will keep the rest of us safe. Emily clenched her fists whenever she heard that word savage, because she didn't believe any people were truly savage. But fear does strange things to the mind. It twists the unknown into something monstrous. She had tried to hide her worry, especially from her father. He was a good man, worn down by grief since her mother passed. He truly thought he was protecting Emily by agreeing to the arrangement. He couldn't bear any more loss. Peace meant safety. So he bargained away his daughter's future for the security of the community, a decision that haunted Emily every night. In quiet moments before sleep, she imagined the warrior. Did he look at her name on that treaty and feel trapped too? Did he resent her? Did he think she was weak, some scared settler girl he'd have to drag into his camp? Sometimes she wondered if he looked up at the same moon and asked himself whether he could ever love a woman who came from a world so different than his own. Fear tugged at her heart, but curiosity tugged harder. Her younger brother, Luke, burst through the door, holding a torn-up newspaper. "He's coming, Emmy," he shouted. They spotted Apache riders near the canyon road. Emily felt the porch boards tilt under her feet, though she hadn't moved. Chayton, real, breathing, living Chayton, was riding closer with every second. Her stomach twisted into knots. "What if he doesn't like me?" she whispered, voice trembling. "What if he's unkind? What if he takes me away and I never see you or pay again?" Luke's bravado softened. He hugged her waist tighter than usual. "You can shoot better than any man here," he mumbled. "If he tries anything, you'll scare him straight." She laughed through a sudden tear. It felt good, something familiar grounding her while her future spun out of reach. But by evening, as the sun bled red behind the buttes, her laughter faded. Her father stood tall in his best coat, gazing toward the horizon with the solemn pride of a man welcoming history through his front gate. Then they saw him. Chayton rode a black stallion, hair long and dark as midnight, posture carved from stone. His presence was quiet yet powerful, like a storm that hadn't struck yet but promised to. Emily's heartbeat fluttered like a hummingbird caught in a cage. For the first time, she saw the man who claimed her future. And for the first time, she wondered if her destiny wasn't something to fear, but something waiting to be discovered. The earth itself seemed to pause as Chayton pulled his horse to a halt before the Carter Ranch. Dust swirled around him like a spirit's dance, and every man on the porch instinctively straightened his spine. Even the horses in the corral looked up, aware that a force of nature had arrived. Emily stood frozen just a step behind her father. She had prepared herself for someone rough, scarred, maybe wild-eyed. But the warrior who met her gaze was nothing like the hushed rumors whispered over quilting frames and church pews. He sat tall, shoulders broad beneath deer-hide armor marked with bold tribal patterns. Eagle feathers fluttered in his hair, and a necklace of carved bone rested over his chest, symbols of strength, of honor. His face was cut sharp as the canyon cliffs, yet his eyes, those eyes were steady, intelligent, and far too deep to decipher in a heartbeat. He dismounted slowly, never taking his gaze off Emily, her breath caught. He was intimidating, undeniably, but not like a nightmare you run from. More like a mountain you must climb carefully, step by step, because something breathtaking waits at the top. Her father cleared his throat, voice tight with nerves. "Welcome to my home, Chayton. You are expected." The warrior placed his fist over his heart, a gesture of respect. "I honor your hospitality. Samuel Carter." His voice was smooth, low, and resonant, like thunder from far off that promises rain. Emily felt that voice deep in her bones. Her father motioned to her. No pushed her forward. Her boots scuffed the dusty porch. "This is my daughter." "Emily," he announced. Emily dipped her head, though her pulse reminded her she was still alive beneath her fear. Chayton looked at her fully then, not just seeing her, but reading her inward trembling as if it were ink on a page. For a long moment, neither moved. Then he spoke what everyone had been holding their breath for. "Emily Carter," he said, her name rolling like poetry from his lips. "You are the woman promised to me." Her cheeks flushed hot, not from shame, from the startling realization that her name sounded different in his voice, stronger, worthy. The ranch hands stood nearby, uneasy. Guns hung on their hips, reminders of all the fear between these two worlds. Chayton's gaze flicked to them, assessing, never intimidated. He was one man who could stand before 20 and still look unshakable. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Emily's heartbeat hammered like hoofbeats across the plains. "My people say," he continued, "that a marriage must be owned by both hearts, or it will shatter like dry wood beneath a wagon wheel." His eyes softened. "I did not ride here to steal a life. I came to honor a union." The words hit her harder than any demand could have. She blinked, unsure how to hide her shock. "You care what I feel?" she managed to whisper. His lips curved, not fully a smile, but a small acknowledgement that he heard the courage in her trembling voice. "Your fear is strong," he admitted gently, "but so is your spirit." His gaze swept over her hands, rough from ranch work. "You are not a bird kept in a cage." Emily found herself stepping closer. A tiny movement, but one she hadn't planned. Her father, relieved by Chayton's calm approach, invited him inside for supper. But Chayton shook his head. "My people wait," he said, nodding to the distant ridge where shadowy shapes hovered like ghosts, Apache riders, silent guardians. "But I will return at first light," he promised. Then his gaze settled on Emily again, grounding her in a way that made her knees soften. "Tomorrow we begin learning who we are," he said, "and what we may become together." Emily swallowed, unable to speak. Then Chayton added the words that sent her world spinning. "Tonight, I sleep knowing the dawn brings what is mine, but only if you let it be so." The statement was bold, confident, yet threaded with respect. He turned to mount his stallion once more, every motion fluid as if carved by the wind. Before riding off, he gave Emily one final look, not pressing her, not claiming her body, just acknowledging connection, potential, something unspoken but powerful. As he disappeared into the darkening horizon, Emily stood motionless, her heart no longer pounding out panic, but a question. What if this warrior wasn't here to take her life away, but to open it? When twilight fell fully, she remained on the porch long after the men went inside, staring toward where he'd gone. The wind picked up again, gentler this time. No warning, no fear, just a whisper. Change is coming. And for the first time, Emily found herself hoping that tomorrow, when the Alpha Apache returned, she wouldn't tremble from fear, but from something far more dangerous: desire. Morning came like a whisper of fire over the horizon. The prairie glowed gold, and the wind carried the scent of sage and distant pine. Emily awoke with the memory of Chayton's words still echoing in her mind. Change is coming. And tomorrow, what is mine? She rose carefully, her fingers brushing the edge of her bedroll, and listened. The ranch was quiet, too quiet. Yet she could feel the heartbeat of the land, steady, alive, urging her toward courage. Today, she would meet Chayton again. Today, she would ride with the man who claimed her future, but had yet to claim her trust. When she stepped onto the porch, Chayton was already waiting. His horse pawed at the dirt impatiently, dark mane glinting in the early sun. He dismounted with that same smooth precision she had noticed the day before, eyes scanning the horizon as if he alone could read the land. "Emily," he said, voice low but steady, "I did not come to frighten you yesterday, only to see you, to know the woman who will walk beside me in the days to come." Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the weight of those words. There was no threat in his tone, no demand, only certainty, and that was enough to stir something in her chest she had never felt before. I don't even know you," Emily admitted, her voice quivering. "And you expect me to ride with you as if this is ordinary?" Chayton smiled faintly. "The world is never ordinary, Emily, but it is fair when we face it together. If you let me show you not as a warrior taking a promise, but as a man who values you, perhaps you will see why this must be done." Her brow furrowed. She wanted freedom, yes, but she also wanted understanding. The tension in her chest loosened slightly. For the first time, she wondered if she could see him as more than a figure from terrifying tales whispered in the settlement. He gestured toward the open prairie. "Ride with me. See the land my people honor, the life we have built. Judge for yourself whether it is savage or strong." Emily hesitated. Her father's eyes met hers from the porch, an unspoken message to trust, to try. She nodded, climbing onto the horse that Chayton handed her. Its leather saddle was firm, unfamiliar, yet sturdy under her touch. They rode side by side, the wind tangling Emily's hair, whipping her skirts against the horse's flanks. Chayton rode effortlessly, guiding her through valleys and along ridges that overlooked the sprawling prairie. Birds scattered in their wake, and the land stretched endlessly beneath a sky so vast it made her small and alive at the same time. "You see," Chayton said softly, "every place has a story. Every life a purpose. My people live in harmony with the earth, not against it." Emily listened, marveling at his knowledge, at the respect in his voice. He didn't lecture or demand. He shared. And slowly, the fear she had carried began to crumble. At a creek where the water ran clear and fast, he dismounted and offered her his hand. Emily hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, grounding, yet gentle, strong enough to steady her nerves, but careful not to overtake her. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, curiosity piercing the last of her fear. "Why not just take what you are owed?" "Because a promise taken by force is nothing," he said, eyes meeting hers squarely. "A promise given freely, that is unbreakable. I wish to earn your trust, Emily, to show you there is honor in what I am about to ask of you." Her heart fluttered, startled by the tenderness in his tone. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had considered her feelings, not even her father. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Emily rode close, sometimes brushing her hand against Chayton's in passing, feeling sparks of connection that she couldn't explain. Each glance, each subtle movement, whispered a language she had only begun to understand, the language of respect. Curiosity and the budding stirrings of desire. By the time they returned, Emily's world had shifted. She no longer saw Chayton as a wild, frightening figure from frontier tales. She saw him as a man with strength tempered by honor, a warrior whose heart might not belong to her. Yet, she hoped it could. As they dismounted, Chayton inclined his head respectfully. "Tomorrow, Emily, we will begin truly knowing one another. Not as settler and warrior, but as two people bound by choice, by promise, and perhaps by something stronger than either of us yet understands." Emily's knees trembled, not from fear but from anticipation. She had begun to see that love, like the untamed prairie, demanded courage. It demanded surrender. And for the first time, she was ready to step into the unknown, not trembling with terror, but with hope. Night fell like a velvet curtain over the Carter Ranch. The moon was a silver blade slicing through clouds, and the wind whispered secrets Emily wished she could forget. She had spent the day riding with Chayton, learning the land, feeling his presence near her, and most unsettling, feeling something stir in her own heart that she didn't yet understand. But night had a way of bringing fears to life. Emily was preparing to head to bed when a shout rang out from the corral. Her father's voice, harsh and panicked, cut through the cool air. "Outlaws! They're coming!" Her blood ran cold. Outlaws had been raiding settlements nearby, taking cattle, and sometimes even targeting families tied to the peace treaty. And tonight, it seemed, their greed had led them straight to the Carter Ranch. Before Emily could think, Chayton appeared at the doorway, moving faster than her eyes could follow. He held a bow in one hand, arrows nocked, his other hand ready to defend. His dark eyes blazed with determination. Emily inside. He commanded gently, yet firmly, "Stay where you are safe." But Emily didn't stay. She had seen the fear on his face, not for himself, but for her, and something inside her refused to hide. "They won't touch you," she whispered, more to herself than to him. She grabbed the rifle from the mantel, shaking hands steadying over the barrel. Chayton's eyes softened, but there was no hesitation in his movements. He ran toward the sound of breaking gates and barking dogs, Emily following, heart pounding. The outlaws were bold, their lanterns casting long shadows across the yard. They did not expect Chayton, and they certainly did not expect Emily. "Run!" Chayton shouted, loosing an arrow that struck a lantern, plunging part of the yard into darkness. Emily fired her rifle, aiming not to kill but to scare, and she was surprised at how steady her hands were. She remembered every day her father had taught her, every practice session where she had imagined danger and fought it down. Chayton moved like a shadow, silent, fast, lethal. But he never touched her unless necessary. He guided, protected, shielded. Emily realized then that the stories of wild, savage warriors were only half the truth. Chayton's strength was tempered by honor, his bravery by care. One of the outlaws lunged for Emily. She froze, but Chayton was there in an instant, tackling him to the ground with such force that the man barely had time to scream. Another arrow whistled through the air, striking a wheel and toppling a crate. The outlaws scattered in confusion, unsure how to face a man who moved like the wind itself. Emily watched him fight, her fear giving way to awe, then to something she could not name. Her chest tightened, and her stomach fluttered in a way that was both terrifying and thrilling. She wanted to run into his arms, not because she was scared, but because she needed to feel safe, close, tethered to the one person she trusted more than anything. When the last outlaw fled into the shadows, Chayton turned to her. He was breathing hard, hair matted against his forehead, but his eyes, those dark, stormy eyes, were fixed on her. "You're safe," he said, voice low, a rumble that seemed to resonate in her chest. "Because I will not let anyone harm you, ever." Emily swallowed, tears pricking her eyes, not from pain but from the intensity of what she felt. She took a hesitant step forward, then another, and before she realized it, she was pressed against him, her arms around his neck. I thought I might lose you," she whispered. Chayton's arms encircled her, strong enough to shield her from the world, gentle enough to not frighten her. "You did not," he said. "Not while I breathe." In that moment, fear and desire intertwined. Emily realized that the trembling she had felt when first meeting him was no longer fear alone. It was anticipation, longing, and trust all at once. She had been promised to him by treaty, by duty, but tonight she gave herself willingly. They stood there, holding each other under the moonlight. Two worlds colliding, settler and warrior, fear and courage, duty and desire. And as the wind carried the scent of sage and smoke through the yard, Emily understood something profound. Love, true love, was not about surrendering freedom. It was about finding strength together, about trusting someone enough to let them stand beside you. By the time they returned to the house, the adrenaline had faded into a quiet warmth. Chayton stayed close, guiding her through the door, making sure every step she took was safe. Emily glanced at him, and in the depths of his gaze, she saw not only a protector but a man who would fight for her heart, her trust, and her future. And for the first time, she allowed herself to hope, not just for peace in the valley, but for the love that had begun to bloom in the shadow of danger. The dawn after the attack was soft and golden, the prairie awash in a warm glow that seemed to heal even the deepest scars of the night. Emily stood on the porch, brushing the dust from her skirts, and found herself thinking not of fear, but of the warrior who had saved her life, Chayton, the alpha Apache. The man who had once seemed impossible, now utterly essential to her world. He rode up just as the sun crested the hills, the black stallion's hooves clicking against the dry earth. His eyes searched for her before they met her gaze, steady and knowing, as if he could see inside her heart. "Emily," he said, voice low and steady, "I wish to speak with you." Her pulse fluttered. Yesterday, he had protected her with strength and precision. Today, he approached not as a warrior, but as a man asking permission to enter her life in a different way. They walked together to the ridge overlooking the valley, the same path they had taken on their first ride. But this time, the air was charged not with fear or uncertainty, but with expectation, tension, and possibility. "I know this marriage was promised by treaty," Emily began, voice trembling slightly, "but—" She paused, struggling to find the right words. "I don't want it to be forced. I want to understand it, us, before anything else happens." Chayton regarded her with quiet intensity, his hand brushing back a strand of hair from her face. "Emily, I do not ask you to surrender. I ask you to choose. And I promise that whatever happens between us, it will be because your heart allows it." The weight of his words pressed against her chest. Choice, respect, love not demanded, but earned. Something that had never been offered to her before. Something that stirred a courage deep inside. She faltered, then drew a steady breath. "I choose you." Chayton's lips curved into a smile, slow and deliberate, the kind that carried warmth, strength, and devotion all at once. "Then tonight," his voice lowered to a husky whisper, almost lost to the wind, "what I take is freely given." Emily's heart thundered. The tremor she had once felt out of fear now coursed through her veins as anticipation, longing, and a deep, undeniable connection. She stepped closer, and for the first time, she felt the line between duty and desire blur, replaced by mutual trust and the spark of passion neither of them had expected. They walked hand in hand back toward the ranch, their steps in sync, the weight of yesterday's terror replaced by a gentle electricity between them. The men of the settlement, previously tense and wary, gave Chayton respectful nods. No longer just the alpha Apache, he was now the man who had proven himself not through fear or violence, but through honor and courage. Back at the porch, Emily turned to face him. The world felt quiet around them, as if the land itself held its breath. "Chayton," she whispered, "I am ready. Not because it was promised, not because it is expected, but because I trust you, and I want this." He lifted her hands to his lips, pressing a tender kiss that spoke of devotion, of patience, of love earned in the shadow of danger. "Then I will honor that trust every day," he said. "I will protect your heart as fiercely as I protected your life." Emily smiled, a mix of relief and joy washing over her. Fear had given way to understanding, and understanding had grown into love. She had stepped into the unknown, and it had not broken her, it had lifted her, expanded her world, and given her a partner who respected her courage as much as he admired her beauty. That evening, under a sky streaked with violet and gold, they shared their first embrace as promised partners, not bound by treaty alone, but by choice, by respect, and by the kind of love that only grows when two hearts meet in honesty and courage. The alpha Apache had claimed her, yes, but not by force. He had claimed her heart, and Emily trembled. Not from fear this time, but from joy, anticipation, and a love that promised a lifetime of adventure together. The prairie wind carried the scent of sage, and in that scent, Emily sensed the promise of a new dawn not only for her and Chayton, but for two worlds beginning to understand each other, united through courage, respect, and the love of a brave frontier woman and a proud warrior. The sun rose over the Carter Ranch in a golden blaze, painting the prairie in colors that promised new beginnings. Emily stood on the porch, her fingers entwined with Chayton's, feeling the warmth of his hand seep into hers. The morning was calm, yet charged with the promise of life transformed her life. Their life and the life of a valley that had once teetered on the edge of fear and suspicion. The past days had tested them both. Danger had come in the night, courage had been demanded, and love had been revealed not in words alone but in actions. Emily no longer trembled when she saw Chayton. She no longer feared what the future might hold, because she had discovered something more enduring than fear, trust, understanding, and the blossoming of love born in shared trials. Chayton turned to her, eyes reflecting the sunlight and the promise he carried. "Emily," he said softly, "the land is ours to share. Your people and mine. We can make peace not just with treaties, but with understanding." Emily nodded. She had seen the Apache children playing in the fields with the ranchers' children, watched Chayton teach them how to track and read the land, and listened as he shared stories of his people's history, their wisdom, and their courage. She understood now that the rumors of savagery were lies told by fear. The Apache were a proud, intelligent, honorable people, and she had the rare chance to build a bridge between two worlds. Her father approached, tipping his hat in respect. "Emily, I see now that you've chosen well. And Chayton, thank you for protecting my daughter, for showing us all what honor truly is." Chayton inclined his head, eyes steady and calm. "I honor her, and I honor this land," he said. "Peace is only possible when hearts respect one another." Emily smiled, leaning into Chayton's side. Her heart swelled not just with love for him, but with the knowledge that she had grown stronger, braver, and wiser through every challenge. She had chosen him not out of fear, not out of duty, but out of understanding and desire. And he had chosen her, respecting her heart, valuing her courage, and proving that love and honor can coexist even in the harshest landscapes. Over the next days, the two communities came together. Apache and settlers traded goods, shared skills, and learned each other's languages. Emily taught English to the Apache children, while Chayton guided her in learning his language and customs. Every lesson, every shared smile, every handshake built a bridge stronger than any treaty. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Emily and Chayton stood together, looking over the valley. Horses grazed peacefully, children laughed, and the scent of wildflowers and sage filled the air. "Do you ever regret it?" Emily asked quietly, glancing at him. Chayton's gaze softened. "Never. I could not ask for a braver, kinder, truer partner. You chose freely, and that makes everything we have even stronger." Emily rested her head against his shoulder. "And I could not ask for a man who respects my heart as well as my courage. You've shown me a world I never imagined, and it is beautiful." He wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "Then we will face this world together, Emily, not as promise or treaty, but as equals, as partners, as lovers who choose one another every day." The wind whispered through the prairie, carrying the scent of possibility, growth, and the unspoken promise of forever. Emily smiled, heart full, knowing that she had stepped into the unknown and found not only love but a life of purpose, courage, and joy. And so, the promised bride became more than a symbol of peace. She became a bridge between worlds. She became a woman who chose her own destiny. And she became a partner to a warrior whose strength was matched only by his honor and devotion. The Alpha Apache and the frontier maiden stood together on the ridge, hands clasped, hearts intertwined. The sun rose higher, warming the land that had witnessed fear, courage, and love alike. And in that warmth they understood. Their life ahead would be filled with challenge. Yes, but also with laughter, love, and the enduring knowledge that together they could overcome anything. The valley was peaceful. Their hearts were full. And for Emily and Chayton, the dawn of a new life had truly arrived. Happy ending. Love, respect, and courage transformed fear into hope, duty into choice, and two worlds into one united by understanding and devotion.